We'd been hunting at night for years, just a group of high school kids looking for an adventure in the thick Alabama woods. It wasn't about killing anything, it was about the thrill, the stories, the rush of running through the trees with nothing but our flashlights and rifles. But that night in a forest we'd never stepped foot in before, we realized that some places weren't meant for us. It was too quiet. Normally the woods were alive with crickets, the distant calls of owls, the rustling of unseen animals in the underbrush, but that night nothing. Just the sounds of our boots crunching on dead leaves and the occasional nervous cough. "You sure about this place, Mason?" I asked, keeping my voice low. Mason, the self-proclaimed leader of our little group, nodded. "Yeah, man, my uncle used to hunt out here. Said the deer were bigger, but..." He trailed off, his flashlight sweeping across the twisted tree trunks. "I don't know, it's weird." We pressed on, uneasy but unwilling to admit it. The deeper we went, the more unnatural it felt. The air was thick and humid, but it carried no scent, no damp earth, no pine, no decay, just nothing. Then the first noise of the night, a twig snapping somewhere behind us. We all turned, flashlights cutting through the darkness. "Probably just a deer," Jesse muttered, but I saw the way he gripped his rifle tighter. Then came the whispering. It was low, just at the edge of hearing, like wind through dead leaves, but there was no wind. Jenna, the only girl in our group, went rigid. "Did y'all hear that?" Mason waved it off. "Just the trees," he said, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. Then something moved. Not a deer, not a raccoon, something big. The light from Jesse's flashlight caught it for a second. A figure crouched behind a tree, impossibly still. I couldn't make out its face, just the dark shape of something human-sized watching. We should have left, but we didn't. Instead, Mason, always the brave one, took a step forward. "Hey, who's out there?" The figure twitched, and then before our eyes it changed. One moment it was just a shadow in the trees, the next it was Mason, exactly Mason. Same build, same clothes, even the same rifle slung over its shoulder, but its face, gosh, its face was wrong. Its eyes were too large, too black, like twin voids sucking in the light. Its mouth stretched too wide when it grinned, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too many. We froze. Mason, not the thing, but our Mason, stared at it, his face drained of all color. "Run," Jenna whispered. The thing tilted its head back at the same time Mason did, as if it were mimicking him, and then it moved. It didn't step forward, it jerked, like a glitch in a video, covering too much ground in an instant. Jenna screamed, and suddenly we were all running, crashing through the brush like panicked deer. I didn't look back, not until we broke through the trees and saw Mason's truck. I scrambled into the passenger seat while Mason threw himself into the driver's side, Jesse and Jenna barely making it into the back before he gunned it down the dirt road. The thing never chased us, at least not in any way we could see. But as we sped away, headlights bouncing over the uneven road, I saw something in the rearview mirror. A figure standing in the middle of the road, and this time it looked exactly like me. The morning air was crisp as I adjusted my backpack and set out on the trail. The sky, a muted gray, stretched endlessly above the towering pines. I had planned this solo hiking trip for months, eager to escape the city and immerse myself in the wild. The Appalachian wilderness promised solitude and beauty, and for the first few hours it delivered exactly that. The trail was well worn, but after a few miles I veered off onto a lesser-known path. It was an old logging road, barely more than a narrow strip of dirt winding through thick trees. The deeper I went, the quieter everything became. The usual sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves faded, replaced by an eerie stillness. It wasn't until I reached a clearing that I noticed something peculiar. An old, abandoned cabin stood in the middle of the clearing. Its wooden frame was warped with age, the windows were shattered, and the door hung slightly ajar. I hadn't seen any mention of a cabin on the map, and curiosity got the best of me. Slowly I approached. The air inside was heavy and thick, with the scent of damp wood and decay. Sunlight streamed through the broken roof, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the still air. A single chair sat in the middle of the room, facing a fireplace filled with cold ash. A tattered journal lay on the floor beside it. I picked it up, flipping through the yellow pages covered in hastily scribbled handwriting. The writing said, "I hear them at night, whispers in the trees, footsteps just outside the door. I am not alone." A chill ran down my spine. I closed the journal and placed it back where I found it. Just as I turned to leave, a whisper, soft, barely audible, brushed against my ear. "Help me." I froze. The hair on my arms stood on end. My eyes darted around the empty room, searching for the source. My rational mind insisted it was just the wind, but deep inside I knew better. Stepping outside, I noticed the forest had changed. The trees seemed closer, their twisted branches reaching toward the sky like skeletal fingers. The air had grown colder. The sun, which had been peeking through the clouds, was now completely gone, leaving the woods in an unnatural twilight. Then I saw it. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing. Tall, thin, almost translucent, it flickered like a candle flame, shifting between shadow and substance. I could make out faint details of a face, sunken eyes, hollow cheeks. It was watching me. My breath was caught in my throat. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to move. The figure raised a hand, pointing toward the cabin. The whisper returned, more insistent this time. "Help me." Something deep inside me screamed that I needed to leave, but another part, a strange, unexplainable pull, urged me to stay. My heart pounded as I took a cautious step forward. The figure didn't move, but its eyes, empty, yet filled with something I couldn't comprehend, locked onto mine. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. The woods came alive again. Birds chirped, leaves rustled, and the sun peeked back through the clouds. I stood there, breathless, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I reached the main trail, panting and drenched in sweat. The cabin, the figure, the whispers, all of it, it felt like a dream. Yet the fear gripping my chest was real. I never looked back. To this day, I don't know what I encountered in those woods, but sometimes in the quiet of the night, I still hear that whisper, "Help me." I still don't know why we did it. Maybe it was grief, maybe it was boredom, maybe it was just sheer stupidity. But what started as a way to feel close to our mother again turned into something far worse than we could have ever imagined. It was late October when my sister Emily and I made the plan. Mom had been gone for almost a year, and it still didn't feel real. She was buried in that small, forgotten cemetery at the edge of town, the one hidden past the winding back roads where the headstones leaned and cracked with age. No one ever visited except for us. Maybe that's why we thought we could get away with it. We live in a small town in Alabama, and the cemetery is very run down. The idea started as a joke. Emily had been reading about seances, about how spirits could be called to speak to the living. "What if we tried it with Mom?" she asked one night. At first I laughed. It felt ridiculous. But then the idea took root. What if it worked? What if we could talk to her one last time? So we ended up packing a few candles, a lighter, and an old silver locket Mom used to wear. We figured that if anything could help her spirit find us, it was that. By the time we left the house, it was already past midnight. The drive to the cemetery took longer than I remembered. The road stretched out in eerie silence, trees forming a blackened tunnel above us. We parked on the gravel path and stepped out into the night. The cemetery was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that felt wrong, like the world had stopped breathing. A thin mist curled along the ground, wrapping around the headstones like grasping fingers. The moon was barely visible through the thick clouds overhead. We found Mom's grave easily, kneeling in front of the simple marble headstone. We arranged the candles in a small circle and lit them one by one. The flickering flames cast long, twisting shadows over the grass. Emily clutched Mom's locket in her hand, her knuckles white. "Are you sure about this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded. "We have to try." We joined hands, our fingers ice cold despite the humid Alabama air. Emily cleared her throat and began. "Mom," she said, her voice trembling, "if you can hear us, please give us a sign." Nothing, just the wind sighing through the trees. Emily swallowed and tried again. "We just want to talk to you. Please, if you're here, let us know." Still nothing. I was about to suggest that we stop when a sharp gust of wind rushed through the cemetery, so strong that the candles flickered and nearly went out. Emily and I gasped, clutching each other. "That had to be her," she whispered, her eyes wide with excitement. But something felt wrong. The silence had changed. It was no longer peaceful, but suffocating. My stomach twisted as a deep chill spread through my body. Then we heard it, a whisper, faint, just behind us. I spun around, my heart hammering. There was nothing there, only the rows of graves stretching into darkness. Emily's grip tightened on my hand. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I nodded, my throat too dry to speak. Then the whisper came again, louder, closer. It wasn't Mom's voice. It was deep, wrong, a guttural rasp that didn't belong to anything human. My blood ran cold as the shadows behind the candlelight seemed to shift and thicken, curling towards us like living things. The whispering grew, overlapping, a chorus of hissing voices all around us. Emily grabbed the locket and held it out. "Mom, if this is you, please say something." A slow, dragging sound echoed from the darkness. Something was moving, coming closer. Then a voice, low and taunting, spoke just behind me. "Not your mother." I screamed. Emily yanked me to my feet, knocking over one of the candles in the process. The flames danced wildly, casting monstrous shadows across the graves. The temperature plummeted, and for the first time I felt it. Something was standing just outside the candlelight. I didn't want to look, but my body moved on its own, my eyes dragging towards the darkness, and I saw it. A figure, tall, impossibly thin, with limbs too long for its body. Its skin was stretched tight over its bones, its face obscured in the shadow. But its eyes, gosh, its eyes, they glowed, two burning embers staring straight into my soul. It smiled. The next few seconds were a blur. Emily grabbed my arm and yanked me backward, her voice barely audible over the roaring blood in my ears. "Run!" We didn't look back. We sprinted through the cemetery, past rows of forgotten graves, past the rusting iron gates, past the trees that seemed too close and around us. The whispers followed, laughing, mocking. The car was in sight, but my legs felt like lead, as if something unseen was trying to pull me back. We threw ourselves into the car, slamming the doors shut. Emily fumbled with her keys, her hands shaking so hard she could barely get them into the ignition. The engine roared to life, and just as we peeled out onto the road, I risked one last glance at the cemetery. The figure stood at the gate, watching us leave. Its eyes still burned. We never spoke about that night again. We never returned to the cemetery. Mom's grave was left untouched, and I could only pray that whatever we'd called that night hadn't followed us home.